is you see a video looping, or no, you don't. There will be a video looping while we're speaking, and that's examples of work of people on this panel. We want you to see how they're on the front lines and getting things done in this space. And so if you see something in the panel, feel free to ask a question. So I want to start with introductions, and I'm Scott McCormick. Emergent Enterprise is my company. It's two things. I do some consulting in the emergent technology space, especially with a focus on training for the enterprise and user experience. And then Emergent Enterprise is also a news website. So if you go to emergent-enterprise.com, there are articles about the very things that we're talking about at this conference. So I'm going to start to my left with Donna, and we'll just go down the line, and they'll give a brief introduction of themselves and why they're sitting up here.
Good morning. I'm Donna Davis. I am the director of the Strategic Communication Master's Program at the University of Oregon, as well as the director of the new Oregon Reality Lab. So based on the research that I've been doing for the last 10 years in immersive social virtual worlds, with a recent focus on vulnerable populations and people with disabilities. So when you see the folks with disabilities on the screen, you'll know that that's our work.
Chris Koomen. I'm working for KLM Airlines for 12 years now. Started as a mechanic, did that for 9 years, and now 3 years I'm a virtual reality specialist. We are creating virtual reality training for all our crew, like ground crew, flight crew, cabin crew, all of them actually.
All right, thanks, Chris. Joe?
So Joe Millward, run the Innovation Lab for TAFE New South Wales. We're the largest vocational trainer in the Southern Hemisphere. We have 500,000 students, 136 campuses. We train everything from hairdressing to construction to nursing, pretty much. So yeah, that's me.
My name's Christian Clark with the Ford Motor Company. I'm part of the Emerging Technology and Innovation Department's Extended Reality team. So we focus on augmented reality, virtual reality, all the medium in between, and how it can be applied mainly for B2B for things like training and teaching people what to do.
Thank you. And just a quick programming note, because during the video you will see some footage from Old Dominion, which was from Mia Jo, who originally was going to be on the panel, but unfortunately she had a conflict that didn't allow her to be here. So you will see some footage there that is not represented by somebody up here. I just wanted to make that clear. Okay, guys, I'm going to start with this. It's almost a sort of a linear feel to it, maybe, because we hear a lot out here. The technology is so amazing and it's so enticing that you almost want to start with the solution before the problem. And I'm wondering how you guys deal with, really you should see the problem and then match it with the appropriate technology. How do you guys see something in the field and make that right fit to the technology to the problem? Anybody?
Okay. So we've actually got a bit of a structure, and it's sort of the 5 sort of phases of innovation, which we was inspired from a Microsoft thing that they did. So sort of identifying what the current status quo is, what is the problem, what is the solution they envisage it being, and what does that solution deliver, and what does the new status quo look like? If they can articulate that to me, it means they've thought about all those parts. If they can't, we work with them, we workshop it, and we see if it applies. We also we've got a partnership with Stanford, so we actually use Jeremy Balance's sort of 4 drivers of VR, which is obviously a dangerous, rare, expensive, or impossible, and they're amazing as well.
Yeah, that book of his is really incredible. Christian, how about you? At Ford, how does that process unfold?
For when it's coming from an idea that we then try to find the technology for, is one of the big things is making sure that it's not just someone that says, oh, this is a brand new shiny thing, we want this. I want a HoloLens for my new training scenario. And maybe that isn't the amount of fidelity you need. Maybe something like a Glass for Enterprise would work, where you just give a list of instructions rather than the whole overlay of arrows floating above real world counterparts. Just making sure that the scope of what wants to be built out is a good thing to do. And then for where training should go is either by the idea that we have this module that is a high expensive piece of machinery and we don't have spares for people to work on, so we need a training scenario for someone to learn this machine till they go into the real one. And that's the idea driving it, or we do just get technology and say, all right, we have VR when it came out a few years ago. What do we do with this now that we're part of a team that looks at how it can be used for training and guide instruction, see what I see things. So we just built something and showcase it through the company and then say, hey, does this get your wheels spinning? Does this look like something you could use in your department or something similar? And then come to us and we'll try to figure out what might be a viable solution.
Excellent. Either you guys want to tackle that one?
I'm an ethnographic researcher, so it's my job to observe and record and study and understand. So we always start with you can't make assumptions. What we do is work with people and look and observe and figure out what will work for them. So there's a piece on the video where you'll see a young man where we're putting the hand controller on his foot at Linden Lab. And his caregiver had said he was not willing to do the physical therapy, just had hip surgery. But when we put the hand controller on his foot and he started to kick, he was watching his avatar on the screen wave with his arm, which is something his human couldn't do. And he wailed with joyful noise. It was one of those moments in time where you thought, I never thought of a hand controller as a physical therapy tool for someone's arm. So it's being able to explore, play. We give people space and say, do what you want with it, just let us observe. And we learn so much about accessibility of technology through 3 years of observation and giving people gadgets to hack. And what we learned from them in that capacity was pretty amazing.
Good point, observation. Excellent. And feel free to run the video while we're talking. I think that'd be helpful.
I think the really great thing you mentioned there is that surprise element. You think it's going to go one way, and suddenly, especially the users, they're new in the medium, so they'll do something that's completely unexpected. So we've got a plumbing experience which you'll see floating through. We've done 23 iterations of that plumbing experience because they keep doing things we don't expect. And we're like, oh, we've got to change it a little bit, we've got to change it a little bit. So you want to make it so it's frictionless for them as well.
Right. And that goes to user experience, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So let me sort of move through the evolution of an employee in their training interactions with an enterprise. And one of the first areas is onboarding, right? They come to a company and they hopefully are excited about the new company that they're going to work for. And using one of these technologies can be a big win in onboarding because you're saying, hey, we're forward thinking, we're cutting edge if you want to use that cliche, but we're ahead of the game. And I'm wondering, Chris, at your place, are you using some of these things for onboarding and having those kind of victories?
Yes, actually we do. KLM City Hopper was exploring virtual reality a year ago, and they were asking me, could we create something to help the people in front of when they started training for the stewardesses it was. So I was thinking, how could we approach this? We used 360 video for this, and we went into the aircraft, shot there like 40 shots of video of it's like 30 seconds less, no, that's it. And guide the stewardesses around in that aircraft to show where is the equipment they have to find, what are the systems, how are they working. That was their first aircraft visit. So they could prepare for the real life afterwards. And they find out that that was quite effective. Yeah.
Very good. So you've got the employee in your clutches. They're working for you. You had a big win with onboarding. And now it's time to get them trained in their specific role. What are some areas where you've seen some victories in, such as maybe safety or other places? What are some really big wins that you could give as real-world scenarios. And I just wanted to ask again, is it possible to run the video while we're talking? Okay, very good. So what are some of those wins, whether it be safety or other areas of focus within?
Well, I mean, with our plumbing experience, it is a safety scenario. We're also working on a childcare experience, and that's around that whole preparedness for the environment. I mean, it's a bit different for us because our end customer or our end, it's not our employees necessarily, it's our students as well. So we've got an onboarding experience that we have for the teachers, but the teachers also need to feel comfortable. So they're starting to explore how they do things in childcare. We're getting great feedback. Do they do this in the real world now, or is it a change thing? So are they changing the process, like in the real world, where it could be more improved, or are they changing the process in the virtual world? So we've got to make that comparison. So they're able to explore a lot more with things and say, okay, actually, we might change how we approach this when we do the practical training. So that's been really interesting. So.
Okay.
Safety comes up a lot as one of the big things for training. How do we put somebody to safely practice in an unsafe environment? But there's also expensive equipment. That's something that we need to look at when we develop for training too. Let's say we have some sort of giant robotic arms that are doing some sort of work and it's a multi-million-dollar unit. And we don't have any that we can take offline for the new person to train how to troubleshoot or fix. So using AR, VR, we can have them working on equipment that they wouldn't have access to in the day-to-day, so that when they finally do get a chance to go and work on the real thing, they know where things are. They have more insight into what they should be doing. They've seen it all before to some degree.
Yeah.
And it is good for hard to get to tools or expensive things that we can't put
Or
down.
a key word was take offline. If you have to make that robotic arm stop doing what they're doing, which is making money, basically, then to train that person, then you've taken it out of the workflow. So that's a great point. What's some victories where you guys went, yes, this new technology has really...
I got a good example, I guess. One of the training that we had was for pilots. They were trained for getting hit by a lightning strike while landing in the aircraft. So it was in the middle of the approach where they have to figure out all those numbers and calculating things. And suddenly the lightning strike hits the airplane and then they have to do an exercise. The problem with this is we cannot replicate this, so it's difficult to measure these kind of things. But what we found out a few weeks ago is that 2 pilots occurred a lightning strike on the airplane while landing it. And they mentioned in their report that they fall back to their training that they saw earlier because it felt like that happened before. They really knew what to do. I think that's the strongest case you can have with this. Yeah.
Hey guys, I think we've got our first question for you.
Excellent.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. Question number 1 is for Chris.
Christian.
And it's how do you overcoming for the phase of adoption? Because everybody tries for first time and it's the wow experience, right? But then you go into training, development, and development of content that needs to be developed by the experts in the field. But they might have their training courses as usual. And then, sometimes you find reactions of people saying, well, I don't have time to create everything again. So how do you overcome that to get a wider adoption? And question number 2 for the panel is, what have you been able to measure increasing productivity after training in VR? Like actually measure it. Thank you.
All right, so dealing with, if I can sort of condense that, dealing with pushbacks, say from upper management stakeholders, and then metrics. How do you know, if you've introduced this new technology and it's supposed to make things better, I'm going to want some real metrics, not just you saying things are better. So, want to tackle that?
For the pushback, we've been very lucky in that we don't have any. This is all new and exciting, and upper management wants to implement it, and people want to implement it. We have our training courses that are set up already, and we see that these new tools are a possible way to augment or enhance training. right now, instead of sending someone to a class for a few days where they could be distracted on their phone or half pay attention or not retain any knowledge, if we can throw them into virtual reality, put them in an augmented reality scenario, there's the one wow factor when they put on the device somebody that's never seen or used this kind of thing, and then that makes it, they want to train because they get to do it in VR. And then you can't be distracted by your phone in VR, AR. You're forced to be doing what you're there to do, and the feedback from the people that we've put through training is always very positive. That training seemed like it went by so quick, even though it was 25 minutes, half an hour, because it was neat and exciting and something new. I had to pay attention the whole time, and it's just, and then we can augment more than you'd be able to give through just a sheet of paper or having them watch a training video. You could put them inside the training video, and that brings a lot of dynamic content that management loves to see because it's new and innovative and makes us seem like we're on the cutting edge, because we are, and we're trying out these new things because it has the potential for higher return on investment and teaching someone a job faster from day one.
So on the metrics question,
Yeah.
we've got a fairly sophisticated platform that we've just signed a deal with. We've been working with them for about a year. They're called Immerse out of the UK. And what it allows us to do is, we've got a machine learning team as well, and they're actually looking at, okay, what do they want to measure and what works for them from their models. But also the platform allows a teacher to sit there and watch a student. So they can be on desktop while the student's in VR, and they can flag areas that are important as well. So you've got an objective and a subjective review of the analytics. And all of our analytics get exported as XAPI, which means they go into our learning record store. It's a common data point, which can be compared against traditional learning as well.
Yeah. Certainly you can, almost any task within the enterprise already has metrics, or it should, I would think, whether it's efficiency, productivity, that sort of thing. And so if that's in place, you can agree upon with your stakeholders and say, this is the metric we're going to change. For instance, we make 250 units per hour, but if we introduce this new technology, we project an increase in making 300 units per hour. And then obviously after you adopt it and implement it, you can see very hard numbers if that's affecting that kind of outcome. Did either of the two of you want to deal with either pushback, and maybe not just from stakeholders, as a UX person, and I even see it out in the Expo, because you talked about people being really excited to do the new technology, but some people are apprehensive, especially with VR, because you're strapping these things on and they're in an unfamiliar situation. Some people get motion sickness, some people are claustrophobic, and if you've designed it as a small room, they're in a small room. So pushback, and I'm sure, Donna, you've dealt with that, like, I don't know about this. It can be very awkward. So how do you deal with that? Because you know it's going to help the person once they get past that initial pushback.
I try to communicate, is identify the stakeholders that are the decision makers. And it's amazing how often we can bring people into the lab who've never seen VR before or never experienced it before. And they are really resistant or technophobes, and they're the purse holders, right? So putting them in front of it, show and tell, putting them in the technology is so important. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, now I get it, or oh my gosh. You know, it's such if they've had some emotional or mental barrier to it for whatever reason, putting them in the headset is the deal maker, the deal changer. And you have to be really prepared. That's the other really important thing, is that if you don't have everything up and running and ready to go, and they have an immediate bad experience, it's like using Google Cardboard for the very first time and thinking that's VR and saying, I have no interest at all. And the other issue is understanding the person that's going to be engaging in that experience. We have to be able to be flexible with thinking in terms of 2D and 3D. So we have some people who cannot wear a headset, just simply can't. So they need to experience virtual reality on a flat screen. We actually budgeted for twice as many RIFs when we did our National Science Foundation grant, because we thought we could give everybody a headset. And then it's, oops, but you also need this very expensive computer. And oops, I can't wear it on my head, because working with people with disabilities, sometimes they have problems, musculoskeletal problems, or claustrophobia, or other fears. So it's really understanding who you're about to put in the headset before you do it, so you don't lose them on the very first effort. And it's also making sure that the people who you're counting on as the decision makers understand what you're doing and can experience it in a way that they have that, oh, I never thought about it like that moment, that aha moment that they say, I want in.
Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Chris.
Just to build off that and go back to what you had said before about what your accomplishment is, that pushback of people and their aha moments and some not wanting to wear the devices. One of the greatest accomplishments that we have whenever we do our proof of concepts, because we're starting off to see does this work initially, is when they put on a headset, go through a training, take it off and say, here's what I don't like about your training. This wasn't accurate, this was wrong, these are in the wrong spots, because they don't care at all about the headset or medium that they're seeing it through. It's immediately adopted, and if things just work and are intuitive, then they just say, okay, this is how I train now, and they see through that and they use it as the tool that it is, and then focus on making the content what it should be. And that's one of the more important parts that needs to be gotten across.
Yeah, the Quest has made that frictionless exercise now. So I did demos on the plane on the way over, which is incredible. You know, I had air stewards at the back of the plane actually doing that, and it's that frictionless point. If you just put it on, it works, and then they start pulling apart the special area of their focus. You know, our childcare teachers actually, first time they jumped in, said, yeah, that fence is in regulation, we've got to change that fence, we've got to do this, got to do that. So straight away you're like, okay, you guys are SMEs. And the other part is our for the pushback, as well as obviously getting that feedback, is our managing director is about to receive a looking glass. We'll put it on her desk. So if you haven't seen the looking glass prism, they're in the Expo. So it's a 3D sort of holographic display. So we can send her content, and it's really frictionless, and it's real time. So we can send her every day new content can appear on her desk. She knows what we're up to. She doesn't have to jump into a headset. For a CEO, C-suite, you know, they don't like VR too much because they don't want to look foolish and not know what people are doing. So we put them into HoloLens, or especially having something like the looking glass is really important.
And about the metrics, I can be short actually. I can give you a slide with all the numbers that we have, but who says that's real? I think the biggest thing to measure those kind of things is the adoption, is when people tell you those kind of stories that they felt it was, they seen it before, that they lived it before, that they feel comfortable with it. I started this 3 years ago in my own. By now I have a team of 8 people. That gives an idea how big it goes and how fast it will go within the industry. And I think those are the most measurable things that you have on the metric side. And about adoption, I think one of the most good examples is the Jetway Bridge. That one you see here is built with a Lenovo Mirage. It's a 3DOF controller.
Here's your footage right now.
Yeah, it's that one. It's with a 3DOF controller, but what we find out when we go to the people who actually connect those bridges, those guys are doing that for 20 years, and they said, I cannot connect the bridge with this controller. So we literally threw it overboard, and we started working with HTC first. Then we find out the controllers was not natural. So we started to do it with Oculus Rift, and there they said, well, this is perfect, we have to do this one. So you have to keep in touch with your customer in the end, because they know exactly what they want.
So there might be some folks out here thinking, boy, I'd really love to institute VR, but we don't have the budget. And Joe, you mentioned Oculus Quest, and I feel like that's the unit that gets us one step closer to more of that mainstream usage, both in the consumer space, but also in the enterprise space, because you can spend $400 or $500 for the 128 per unit, and it doesn't require an extra computer or tethers or anything. Like you said, put it on and it works. Are we closer to that sort of mainstream usage that Ford, if they have an initiative that works great in Detroit in the home training spot, but in reality, you need to put it out in 125 locations around the world. That's going to cost a lot of money if you're doing the Rift or a HoloLens or whatever, but maybe something like the Quest gets us a little closer to that mainstream usage. What do you guys think? Be futurists for a second.
It can be cheaper even. I did my first project for 5,000 euros with 360 movie and evacuation of the hangar, which was interactive. It was small for 300 people, but I built it for 5,000 euros. It was like nothing. And it was the start of virtual reality. So, yeah, they love it now. I mean, come on, you just start small and keep experimenting with it. Don't make it very big at the moment that you think, oh, we need to do VR. No, just start small and then it will roll as a snowball, actually.
Okay.
But I do think the Quest is really important. I mean, you know, we've had 20 or so headsets. My lead tech guy is, you know, he's an IT professional. He struggles with Steam updates, Windows updates, all that stuff. So even if you do have a budget to buy a PC machine, you've also got to have that technical support. So you've got to have IT supporting you. But with the Quest, it is basically a phone. You turn it on, it works. So for mine, it's like you can be a little bit guerrilla to start to build that stuff. If you don't have permission from the organisation, you can still potentially do that. And that's, I mean, like Liam has worked in TAFE for 17 years, but he's been in VR for 7 as his side passion, and it just happened the world collided. But he's able to do stuff now. He's saying, I wish I had this 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, really.
Yeah. Okay, we want to take certain spots throughout the time to see, instead of waiting just to the end, to see if you guys have some questions. You have any questions so far? Maybe of some of the video footage that you've seen or what somebody has said?
Got one over here.
Hey there. Curious about AR, so augmented reality versus VR from each of the panelists. It's in the title of the session. Super excited to see if AR is actually being used in your enterprises.
Okay. Thank you. That's a good point to talk about augmented reality. So I know some of you have worked with augmented reality. What kind of efforts have you done, and what kind of results did you see?
I guess first, yeah. I can go. So with us, we see mobile AR as the easy entry point. So we've signed a deal with Zappa as our platform, and we're empowering our students and our teachers to begin to deploy some exploration in that space. We've worked a lot with the HoloLens, we've worked with other devices. Spatial AR is still relatively early. I mean, I'm wearing the North glasses at the moment, but it's still really early and expensive and delicate. A lot of the headsets, you know, you don't want to have a student having a HoloLens unattended. But for mobile AR, you know, Zappa is a great easy device to build for, a platform to build with. So our librarians are going to be one of our first targets, so they can actually build augmented posters that update every day or every week, and they can do it if they can make a PowerPoint presentation, they can make an augmented experience.
Okay.
I think also AR is just so much more accessible across the board. And increasingly, we find people are coming to our lab saying, we have people coming to us asking us how to do this, and we don't know. So they're looking to us we're developing a community ed program in our lab to help train industry on even understanding the language and the uses of AR, because it's now so accessible with a phone or any other number of devices, and easier to create content at the same time. Again, it always goes to who do you want it for and for what effect? And having that up front to know, do I even want to, which one of these devices and which platform do I want to use to reach the people that I want to influence with that technology? So knowing that up front, having those goals and measurements in place are really important. So I think we're going to see a lot more in that space than we have been in VR in the past, because of that accessibility and because the use across cases. So we work with people from all sorts of industries, whether they're We had a marketing agency saying they have clients coming to them asking, how do we get into this? And they don't even know the language yet. So I'm dealing with that level of training. It's just helping them understand what the technology is, how to talk about the technology, and when do you want to use it.
So they come describing a augmented reality type of need, and they don't even know that it's augmented reality.
Correct.
Interesting.
Or they come to you and ask for something augmented reality while they mean virtual reality.
Right.
And
Right.
totally agree with you, but augmented reality and virtual reality are totally different things. And that's what you have to find out first, because with augmented reality, you still need hardware there to train. And virtual reality, I can place you everywhere on any time and where I want to. So, yeah, look carefully for what you use in what use case.
And also the medium is you've got to be particularly conscious and realize that you may think it's going to work in one technology, but you have to pivot otherwise. So our childcare experience started as an augmented reality iPad app because we thought accessibility great, everyone's going to be able to use it, but it was too easy. It wasn't delivering the learning outcomes that we needed, so we pivoted it to be a virtual reality experience, which actually meant it had to be hard work. So they actually had to go around the space and find the hazards and stuff, which is the initial experience. It's being willing to say, oops, we've made a mistake, let's quickly pivot, and having that speed to do that as well.
Yeah. Well, sure, right up front here.
So in our corporate environment, we use PowerPoint and then supplement our training using VR. What approach are you taking with your training methods and packages, I guess, to bridge that gap?
We use both of them as well, actually. It's not that we only use virtual reality because we think virtual reality is a tool, not a solution. So it's kind of blended learning now. That's where we're heading for.
So we actually built a main stage. There's a AWE version of it as well. So we actually have PowerPoint in VR as well. So there's always going to be a blending of the technologies, as Chris said. I mean, for us, it's there's no difference between any of that technology. You've applied the right medium to the right outcome, and we'll continue to see them blend more as well.
And that
So is
gap
that-
doesn't need to be that big to begin with. You could just take your PowerPoints and put them on something like a Vuzix or a lower fidelity headset, and then just having it more accessible could be the thing that makes it changing or game changer.
Yeah, so the Norths are compatible with Google Slides. So if I was doing my own presentation, I could actually have it running, and it's a teleprompter as well. So I mean, quite impressive. And that's the medium everything's going to start to mash together. Also, the 3D PowerPoint stuff's pretty interesting. Most people don't even know it exists. So you can actually take 3D models into PowerPoint natively now, and it's pretty impressive.
So as a user experience guy, I do kind of cringe a little when I think of PowerPoint coming into VR. Just like we did with mobile phones, we were creating all sorts of stuff in PowerPoint, e-learning as we called it. And all we did was take those PowerPoint screens and put them on a screen this big, and they were hard to read, and they were boring on a desktop, and they were still boring when they were on a phone. So how do you avert that? Just pulling the old things onto the new stage and just creating a really poor UX.
So UX for us is absolutely critical. So as I said before, we have 23 versions of the plumbing application we've built. We have no 2D elements in our VR experiences. Like when we can avoid it, if they are 2D things that are required, they're contextual, so TV screen, slide deck, that type of stuff, but no pop-up displays, you don't want those things. We started doing surveys with our students and with other people that are in the experiences on iPads after they got out of VR. And we said, what are we doing? So we're creating a survey tool inside virtual reality at the end of the experience, so they'll put blocks in the right multiple choice areas that they need to do, or they'll be able to group stuff together that they like, stuff like that. So yeah.
But sometimes the other side is that we actually build a cockpit for a flight crew. And what they do is they take their manual and see what they have to do on a tablet. So we literally copied that into their VR experience, because you don't want to have them bad learnings. So then you need to go back to reality, copy it from reality, and then it's more enhanced. They don't have to go to a simulator anymore, they just can do it in VR, but they still have all the things that they have in normal life as well. So also there is
Yeah, that's it.
balance
That
between-
2D stuff's really important. If it's in the real 2D world, it should be 2D. But
Yeah.
none of these pop-ups.
No, for sure not.
No, I'm scared about the advertising screen takeovers of your eyeballs. So that's
exactly, especially in the augmented reality space.
Yeah.
If we start pasting big things in a person's field of vision, does it actually distract them enough that they could injure themselves? You know, the Google AR Maps that's about to come out is already going through some interesting UX changes because of the way people behave. Initially, they had a sort of a whimsical fox in the AR that would kind of guide you to where you should go within maps, but they realized that we need people to be paying attention in the context of where they are as they're following directions of where to go and not watching a cute fox romping around. And then even placing a bold line on the sidewalk and then turning, they found that people were looking down at their screen and trying to walk on the bold line on the sidewalk that's not really there and not paying attention that they might be crossing a street, about to be hit by a bus. So they changed it to arrows in the air to show you which way to go as opposed to on the ground. So UX is key, and it might even save a life. Donna, I wanted to make sure we talk to you because this is a very important thing, and honestly, I don't hear it discussed very much here at the conference. At least I haven't had the interaction except with you, and that's about accessibility. And it's been, if you've been in training long enough, it's been important no matter the platform or the medium, accessibility. And so tell me how you're integrating those needs and those requirements into these new technologies.
Well, we actually went and met with, because I've been working in social VR, so we went and met with Abby Altberg at High Fidelity or at Linden Lab and Philip Rosedale at High Fidelity, and we took two people with us from our disability community. The young man that you see on the wheelchair, that's at Linden Lab, and a woman with Parkinson's disease who has a real problem with tremor. So simple things like, how do you work a mouse if you have a tremor, or work a keyboard, or if you can't use your hands at all, maybe the mouse is the solution. One of the things that Philip Rosedale's been so passionate about is photorealism, that we have to look like our human and that we need to sound like our human. And Cody made a beautiful example of why being able to text is important to him. When he speaks, people don't understand him. He texts with his nose on a phone that's mounted to a bar on the front of his wheelchair. So he can be in a social VR environment and communicate with his nose. So it's important as designers that we think about what ability do people have and what barriers to access might they have, and that we create these technologies in ways that are more accessible, and that we think about the affordances of digital that give people ability so that they're not left on the edges. I actually was speaking to somebody from the innovation lab at Intel not long ago whose team worked on Stephen Hawking's chair, and that they were able to replicate his voice before he lost it. And that when they went to him and said, we can give you your voice back, his response was, I have a voice, and the whole world knows my voice. Why would I want to sacrifice what is my digital identity? It is my digital ability. It's like putting on a new face to the public and expecting everybody to know who you are. So thinking about all the layers of embodiment that technology creates and represents, and how do we experience each of those layers of embodiment, and thinking about Cody who cannot use his hands, or someone who cannot use their legs. We have a woman in our community whose avatar is a tiny super gecko because she doesn't want to be identified as male, female, by age, by weight, by size, and she's also actually in the video. Her gecko has a cape and an S on the chest because she is a super gecko. Because of course in a virtual world you can fly, but she also reminded us that for some people walking is a superpower. So if we think about the capabilities of these technologies to provide access to people, and to make sure that we're thinking about the many layers of ability that can be explored and utilized in these spaces, then we're opening up the world and the metaverse to a lot of people.
Some great victories happening. Are you seeing some of the same things in the
Yeah.
accessibility areas?
Well, I don't have anything to that degree of people not being able to use their limbs, but there are things, because the biggest problem is you don't want to have someone put on a headset, say this is stupid, or I can't wear this, or it makes me nauseous. Color blindness has come into play a couple times. Our text is red and it can't be. We know this now. But yeah, for accessibility, it's just, is the average worker going to do it? It doesn't make anyone motion sick. We've seen some where it's like driving a forklift, and they like to run me through VR because I get sick real easy. So if I can stand it for like 5 minutes, it's probably golden. So ones where you're driving around a vehicle and people come up, hey, we can use this to teach you to drive this forklift or this backhoe or something, and just nope, I can't. Like, I'm immediately sick and need to put it down. So that's something that you can't get to any of the training content for, because you can't even get past the step one of wearing a device.
Yeah, we're particularly paying attention to spatial audio, because we've got we've got a huge cohort, 500,000 students, and you know, a small percentage of a disability is a huge number still. So you know, we want to pay attention to the students that are vision impaired. So there's an amazing Unity plugin that we've found. I can't remember the name of the university that was doing it, but there's different shades and different spectrums that some of the people with vision impairment can see better. So we're going to start applying those spectrums and exploring that space. But people that are completely blind, we want to make sure that they've got an experience. So spatial audio is going to be an important part of that as well. We're looking into augmented reality eyewear for the deaf. So, you know, if a fire alarm goes off now, my north glasses tell me there's a fire alarm, I can see it if I can't hear it. Really, really important. And yeah, this is going to change the world for people with disabilities. For me, I'm super excited, and the story about the super gecko is amazing. I mean, Debbie at the ILMX labs talked about, you know, being able to walk with her friends for the first time. Like, that's the stuff you want.
Now I want to, now because of this, and we've discussed it earlier before also, I want to turn it around actually. When you use virtual reality and you won't be able to do anything because something happens. Think about that.
Right.
Because I saw things when we tested out in an airplane. We put 33 people with headsets on an airplane, in a simulator by the way. The simulator went into a deep dive crashing situation where people were yelling at it, masker drops down, but the people in virtual reality didn't even notice it.
Oof. Right.
So we also can turn it around.
Absolutely.
Oh.
We had a question over here. Thank you, Lou.
Thank you. I just want to ask a question in terms of how important the security is relating to accessibility. So in training, we do know that sometimes you might not restrict yourself in terms of the location. So how do we implement security without contradicting or disrupting the accessibility part of it? Thank you.
Security is not important, is it?
No, not at all. Our students are 100% trustworthy. So we're looking at a number of different measures. You know, we'll have, our headsets won't be widely available straight away, so there'll be some control measures with those. We're looking at like also things like single sign-on, so knowing if that person logs in, it's there. You know, it's a responsibility, a liability of them to look after that device. There's a clean box device on the show floor at the moment where it allows us to do, because hygiene's huge as well. So if we can put a VR headset in that clean box, we can also put you know, a swipe code or something like that to understand who's opened that box and, you know, who's got it at the moment. And if they don't return it, there's obviously a way to track that. But then you've got the data security side of things, which changes things as well. So.
And I think you're also asking about safety and security. So, and that's in working with people with Parkinson's disease. I was at the World Parkinson's Congress, and the doctor said, there's no way I would take my people and put them in this because they were concerned about the security of somebody injuring themselves. So unless you were to have them in a very controlled clinical environment and to be able to see what the risks might be, where they've got somebody with them to protect them from that risk, just as we do when we set up the cage, if you're going in a headset, and knowing what your boundaries are by setting up the boundaries where you're walking, making sure that you know and have tested what those risks are with people who understand risk management, and again, going to observation in a way that you can test those things well in advance, I think is really important.
Yeah,
And
test it out all the time. We did test this simulation situation also because we get several questions about safety, especially when injuries occur in a simulator, because it's still a full motion simulator. Everything can happen where you are not prepared for. So we did 2 runs actually. The first one was a static flight. The second one was a flight with a little turbulence, and the third flight was a rapid decompression. But we did those 2 times just to see what happened the first time. So because you don't know anything about it yet, just test it out, very small level, and then go up each time. Oh, sorry.
I think the mental safety thing is a big issue too, so psychological. So when I was at 3M, we actually had an experience where you started 30 stories up on the side of a building and you could fall off straight away. And I had some huge, huge learnings from that. I induced a little bit of PTSD with some of my customers, which wasn't great. And I had one of my VPs jump into a wall and split his nose open. And you know, that's a good learning lesson, you know. So we'll do the mistakes up here and you guys can learn from that as well. So yeah, really important.
Not necessarily for that VP.
No, he wasn't pretty impressed.
Yeah. Okay. We have just a little over 5 minutes left, and I wanted to make sure each one of you had a chance. So if there's somebody sitting out there and they're ready to adopt AR or VR within their enterprise training initiative, what's your 1 minute word of advice of pushing the boat away from the shore? Christian, you want to start with that?
1 minute. Yeah, 1 minute. Sure.
Micro-learning.
Yeah. Know what problem needs to be solved and the best way to solve it. When we think of AR, VR, we think of 3D models, all this big, fancy, floating, world tracking, slam. Does it need to be? Can it be something as simple as taking your PowerPoints and putting it in just a tiny corner of your eye and giving them those instructions?
Okay, so know the problem.
Yeah, so I did a talk on this earlier on Wednesday. Important stuff for us is content, people, technology, and then the last one, if I remember it, was the future. So think about those 4 things. The people thing's really, it's critical. Nothing's going to happen without having C-suite approval. It's on high. You've got to go as high as you can, get that stuff to them, get them excited. Once they're excited, it makes it a lot easier.
Okay. And that's similar to mine especially from a user experience perspective. I call it the ACT connection, where you place a priority on thoroughly understanding the audience and their needs and concerns, the context of how they'll be receiving this information, and then the technology itself, that you understand the capabilities and the limitations of it thoroughly before you head out and do your thing. Okay.
I guess plan ahead. If you start small and you know what you're heading for, then you can achieve major things, like I did with the first evacuation training. It's a small project for 300 people, but I knew that later on I will have an own team that is building full-time virtual reality on CGI or 360 video, doesn't matter. But I also knew it would take time to get there, and just take that time by small steps. I think that's the best takeaway.
Okay, start small.
Similar to what you've already heard, know your audience, know the need, know who you need to have on your team, and that you've got advocates that are going to help you along the way, so that when thinking of your audience, it's both internal and external, in ways that will get them on board and help them understand and see what it is that can be done. And in closing, I would say I had a really remarkable conversation last night with somebody who said when they got the fight of why do we need to be teaching VR, AR, and XR, and they said 15 years ago, who would have said you needed to be teaching anything about social media?
To addition to that, I think I can speak this one for all of us. When you need help, just ask.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way.
Yeah, we have a great community here. So do we have time for a question or two? I think. I can't see the. Yeah, we do. Right, up front here.
What approach are you taking to protect corporate secrets when these devices have cameras and microphones?
Yeah, another security question, but that's a great point. Go ahead if you want to say it again.
What approach are you taking to protect corporate secrets when these devices have cameras and microphones?
Lots of internal bureaucracy set up to make sure corporate secrets are protected when you try to bring into a plan something with microphones or cameras. That's one of the things, because yeah, a lot of the confidential work that we do in our manufacturing line, we want to bring in this device. What's it do? Well, it's actually tracking a 3D model of the whole world and has cameras all over it. No, they say. So then there's lots of red tape that needs to go through, possibly covering up the cameras and microphones, and especially with how you store information too. Lots of things are moving to the cloud. But what happens if you can't use the cloud because you have a not company device trying to access external sources? Things like that is a big no-no. So on-prem solutions are always something we look forward to, is a way to contain all of our security in-house and only give access to what's absolutely needed.
So know your policies.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's on so many levels. Since glasses might have the ability to take photos or video, I know in one instance in a corporation that people wearing augmented reality glasses into the bathroom, they might be using it on the plant floor, and then wear it in there is very disconcerting to other people, because not knowing if they're taking pictures or video of something that they shouldn't be. So you have to know your policies, and you have to understand all the possible usages of the technology within the context of the situation.
Be always aware that it can spread out in the world. Like I did, for example, we made photos of the aircraft interiors with the knowledge that if I made those things, there is a possibility that it will go outside. Still it is secured, but someone in the company took all those links and put them on LinkedIn. But knowing that it would happen once, there's no secured information there, because I already prepared for that. So keep looking forward all the time.
Also, pressuring the vendors as well. Like we had a great meeting with Facebook earlier in the week, and they're aware now that we've got student data for students from 14 to 70. You can't go outside the country. There's a whole bunch of areas we have to really pay attention to. And if you make sure the vendors understand that early, I mean, Oculus is going to be challenged because Facebook, the mothership, is always going to want that data. So we've got to make sure that they're aware. No, this stuff can't leave. We need to work out how to work with them to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lou. I think we're finished. I want to thank each one of the panelists for their great expertise and experience in this field, and I'm sure we're all happy to stick around if you have specific questions that we can answer and help you with. So thanks for coming out, you guys.
Thank you.